Hey, everybody, welcome to Movies Worth Talking About, where we talk and talk and talk about movies. I'm John Carlos. I am joined by,
Eddie.
and we talked about Blair Witch Project,
Yeah.
which is, we talked
Chef's
about
kiss,
Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, which
which
is,
is we're at odds about that
yeah.
one. Still.
And now we're here to complete the trilogy until they make a fourth one,
Right.
which I'll get to, but fucking don't. We're here to talk about Blair Witch.
Yeah.
Much like Texas Chainsaw 3D was just like, oh, forget the massacre, just Texas Chainsaw. These kids today, everyone just calls Blair Witch Project Blair Witch for short, so fuck it, just Blair Witch. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a part of that modification of the title without putting a number at the end of it. I still don't understand the stigma attached to the numbers.
I know, yeah, it's you have a franchise with the, and then later it doesn't, or it doesn't, and then later you add the, or
I
you just
have
give it the same title again. So we're stuck going fucking
I
Halloween
know.
2018,
Yeah,
Halloween.
exactly. Saying the year afterwards, just or five cream.
Yeah,
Because of the internet, which
yeah.
I fully embrace the title
Oh,
Five Cream still.
I love Scriforum and Five Cream and all that shit. Yeah.
And yeah,
Or
but
I think my favorite was the Fantastic Four reboot that had the four for the second A, so it was Fant Four Stick.
oh yeah, yeah, I remember that. Nobody thinks fondly on that movie, or I mean, does anybody?
I know a dude who fucking
Anybody?
loved it. We
Has
did
he
not agree.
has he ever seen a movie?
Yes, he has.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Has he ever liked a good movie?
Yes, he has.
I'm so
Which makes it all the more interesting.
confused.
Yeah.
That's really confusing. All right. Yeah, no, I had to sit through that one. But okay, we're talking about this one though.
We were talking about Blair
Um,
Witch, which I don't know if you went on the same journey I did as far as the hype going up to it, and not even like the actual
mm,
promotional hype of like the movie, like say like when the trailers and like the weeks leading up to it. I
mhm.
mean, I knew that and oh my god, their names are escaping me, and I know their names.
Adam Wingard and
And Simon Barrett.
Barrett. Yeah. I was
We
gonna say
knew they were
Burnett, and I
making
knew that wasn't right.
we knew they were making a movie called The Woods.
No.
Specifically, I was at San Diego Comic-Con on my way from the hotel to the con when
Mhm,
some Lionsgate people were like, "Hey, would you like to come to a screening tonight of The Woods?" And I'm like, I took the flyer, but I'm
mhm.
like, I'm at fucking Comic Con. There's like a party every night. And unless it's literally like a Marvel or a Batman movie, like I'm not gonna give up my evening to go to a screening.
Sure.
And then like the next morning, the news was like, "Oh my god, at this screening, they screened Blair Witch," and that's when you
Um,
found out. And that's when
right.
the press and like they're like, "It's really Blair Witch." And
Mhm.
like when you enter the lobby, they had posters that said The Woods. And then when you exited at the end of the movie, they'd switch them out, and the same poster said Blair Witch.
Oh wow, that's cool.
So like yeah, so I got sort of, I don't want to say like I overhyped the movie in my head because I also didn't want the movie to exist, but I really like the writer and director a lot going into
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
And between just like the way they announced it, like I was like on board to like go to this movie and enjoy myself. There's
Sure.
no there was no crossed arms going in. But Eddie, there were some crossed arms coming out.
Spoiler. Yeah. I did not go to Comic-Con that year, but I but or ever still. But fine, whatever. It's just I don't know. It seems crowded, and especially now with post-pandemic and everything like that. It's like too scary, too scary. I'll go to a convention at some point, but not now. Not in the next few years. But no. So I remember hearing about the Woods vaguely. Maybe I even did I see it? Did they put out a trailer with it being the Woods maybe at some
There,
point or a teaser?
if
Or
there
did I?
was, it might have been a teaser where it just showed some trees and then said the woods,
Okay,
that
that
kind of
might have
shit.
been it. And I remember it was whatever it is that I was exposed to, it was atmospheric enough that I was just kind of like, oh, that's probably something I would see. And then I found out maybe, I don't know, through an article or because I don't think it was from you, but I just kind of heard tell that no, it's actually a Blair Witch reboot, I don't know, sequel, something. And I was like, okay, well, that's even better, because even though I never saw Book of Shadows at that, or I'd only seen pieces of it, I was like, okay, I'd like to see that's a franchise I'd like to see actually continue to be a franchise. Why not? So I went in.
We'll get to it.
Yeah, we will. No, so I went in. I went with my sister. I remember we were both pretty. I don't know about excited, but we were ready. We were like, okay, show us this Blair Witch thing. And all I remember is by the end, I mean, that whole final sequence when they reach the house, the cabin, the whatever. My arms were crossed. My chin. I watched the whole thing like this. This is probably like the screen POV, and sighed relentlessly because, and I'm not trying not to draw attention or anything like that, but nobody was really having any fun in the theater at that point. But I'd look at my sister, and we were both just like, Jesus Christ, and we were so bored.
And it's
so
89 minutes without credit. I mean, with credits. So you're looking at like an 85-minute experience.
Yeah. And so for the last 15, 20, whatever it is, because I remember by the time they reached the cabin, I was already over it. I was just kind of like, this isn't scary. I'm not connected with any of these characters. And I have a feeling we have more movie to go from here. And yeah, and then by the time it was over, I remember just feeling like, thank God. And we both left so incredibly disappointed. We had a shared experience. And I was just, and I just thought it was such a waste of time. Yeah, I was really upset, and I haven't seen it. I always meant to revisit it because there are champions of this film.
Yeah, I don't.
Well,
God bless you. There's champions of everything. I have a friend who likes fucking Fantastic. So
you like Book of Shadows, but
fuck yeah, I do. But I'm not alone.
Yes,
at least through the internet. But I literally, I know of one person who likes Fantastic. Anyway,
right.
Shared experience.
Yeah. So yeah, we had a shared experience, but afterwards I only saw it stop. But I saw I didn't see it again, but I saw that there were people who were, especially like on Instagram and everything, who were like saying, this is my favorite Blair Witch movie. And I'm like, are you serious?
What?
And yeah, exactly. Or
because the first one's slow, it doesn't show anything. Well, this one you actually see stuff.
But also just like the fact that like people kept using the word underrated for it, and like, how it really is like a great, like using the word great, like, and I'd hear people talk about it on pods when I used to listen to it many more podcasts, had an appetite for many more of them and patience, and I don't now. but I'd so I always thought like, well, I should revisit it at some point, and it was never the correct time. And now finally we were doing this pod, it was the correct time. And yeah,
I was just about to say, I never thought I'd revisit it, never planned on it. And then I thought, well, I know you will at someday, but I'm not planning on it anytime soon.
Right. I'm glad I didn't spend any money on it this time, because I'm already subscribed to Netflix, and as of this recording, it's on Netflix.
And it's going away like in like 2 or 3 days.
Oh, okay, well then good.
A great timing.
Yeah, right. So that said, I have to say there was a number of things that I was just kind of like, oh wow. And during this particular screening, I was like, wow, didn't remember that. Okay. And then but I mean, there was actually like things happening. I just remembered it as kind of like an hour and 10 minutes or so of nothing, and then like waiting for something to happen, and then finally like the last 15 or so minutes stuff seems to be happening, but I'll be damned if I can make sense, heads or tails of it the first time. This time around, I have a more varied opinion. I think I have more boons, to the actors and to the filmmaker, and stuff like that.
This is one of those movies, and this happens to me a lot, where I maybe don't enjoy myself that much. And therefore it stays as a negative in my head, but then it enters the negative pile, where like I retroactively I put it with the same movies that fucking sucks. So for example, Sinister.
Uh-huh.
Whatever.
Okay.
But somewhere in my brain,
Yeah.
it became fuck that fucking movie. And I went back and watched this. I did a review on my buddy's channel like fucking, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. And my
Uh-huh.
response is like, oh, it was somewhat critical. And it's like, yeah, it's all right. I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
guess when I saw it, my brain retroactively thinks things are bad. So anyway, I remember watching Blair Witch
Yeah.
and kind of did the same thing where like I obviously didn't have that great of a time, but like my brain for the last several years has been like, what a fucking piece of shit. And I watched it, I'm like, well, it's not a fucking piece of shit. I'm not going to call it good, but it has some things going for it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that gets squandered. There's a lot of potential, but you know, and I don't like to come here on this show and just shit on the things, but there's some boons.
Yes.
There are some boons, and also a couple things that really bothered me the first time didn't bother me as much this time.
Did you remember pretty much what happened?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because
There's
I
a
had a
few things
lot
I
of
forgot about. There's a part in the middle I went, what? For two reasons, but one of them is I don't remember that. You know, I remember I'm looking for my sister. There's a thing on YouTube. I go to the wood. The tape that we find is really me. We meet up with these two rednecks and we go into the woods and then they get lost in time. We go to like I remember the
I
drone
didn't
gets stuck in a
remember.
tree. I remembered all this shit.
I didn't remember
The
any of
girl's got a
that.
thing in her leg. Like, yeah.
I didn't remember that. Yeah, and it's
And
not like it's great, but
yeah.
it's not as bad as I remember.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's and let me just put this on Front Street in the beginning. Like and I'm using the word love here. I love Adam Wingard.
Yeah.
I love Simon Barrett.
Yeah.
Uh Your Next is one of my favorite fucking horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
I thought The Guest was outstanding.
Yeah.
So, you know, to have those two, and I enjoyed the VHSs that they were involved with.
Uh-huh.
So to go from all that, like going into this, if there was any hype, it was just it like one of the reasons why the movie kind of hurts is because like I expected, this sounds so critical and shit, I expected better from them. And I didn't get it. Let me tell you this, everyone out there, Eddie knows this story. Back in 2004,
Mm-hmm.
Eddie and his sister were staying over at my house, and we were gonna go see a movie. And you know what was just opening that weekend? The Hulk.
Oh God.
Boy, oh boy! You know what? I've never seen a bad Ang Lee movie before 2004.
Right.
Ang Lee is a master. How could the Hulk be anything but a bad time? Let's go see the Hulk.
Anything but a good time. Yeah. You're already showing your hands, sir.
And I just had a very similar experience. So I'm like, holy shit, these guys are some of my favorite new guys in horror. Let's fucking go. And then
but it also makes me think, like, again, like, I don't know the story. Like, you knew the story of, like, you know, the production behind Book of Shadows. I don't know if there's a story behind this one.
Well, the only thing I've seen, and I read this article like yesterday, leading up to this, was because I haven't read much retrospectively of them looking back at this. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Adam. I don't think it was a Simon Barrett interview. I think it was Adam Wingard. But the thing that they were talking about, because the facts are that not only was this, you know, kind of kept secret to the public, but it was also like internally at Lionsgate, like it was registered as like The Woods. And like aside from those involved, like everyone just in the office, like they all knew there's a movie called The Woods. Like it was a secret.
Cool.
But the thing that he was kind of saying was that the retroactively was that like we didn't have like input, we didn't have like test screenings, and some people don't like test screenings. Some people do. Like some directors like to know what audiences are reacting to. And he's like, the fact that we really had it was just our vision and no other input, you know. Maybe had we test screened it, there are things we could have changed. But he just talked about how like isolated it was because so many other people didn't know it was a Blair Witch thing. It really was just this small team focused on it.
Right. And by
So that's
2016, the second you have like those screenings, someone somewhere is going to spill the beans and everybody's going to
exactly
know. So you have to be prepared with like a whole package to sell it as Blair Witch 2016.
right. And so I mean, there's no big juicy story the way like behind Book of Shadows was like.
No.
We hired this documentarian, and he's got an idea of like what I want to do and get meta with it and all that.
Yeah.
And yeah, although I'm glad we kind of brought up Book of Shadows because this is another one of those cases where like, well, we're just going to sidestep kind of anything that 2 says or does. And as far like, all right, here's my thing. I've teased it twice. I feel about this the way I kind of feel about Halloween, which is you had a banger of a first movie and that story's done. And we don't like, you don't need like Halloween 3 doesn't count. Halloween 3 is its own story. You don't need to continue Halloween at all. And maybe we'll talk about it later in another Halloween. There's things I like about Halloween 4 quite a bit. Like I'm not going to say that all the sequels are terrible. I like the sequels, but I will admit Halloween ends like with the first movie. Don't need to go back for more. Blair Witch is, besides being such a great isolated story, but it's also this giant cultural lightning in a bottle. And at least 2 had the good sense to be like, well, let's just not do a sequel. Let's kind of go off to the side and approach it from a completely different angle. Because trying to do a sequel to this would be foolish. So I was fine just letting it be like 1 and then this weird little side sequel thing that's its own thing. This doesn't need to be like there's only so many ways you can have people with cameras getting lost in the woods. It's a fool's errand to extend this brand.
And again, for it to be like 18 years later, we were so past the trend, you know, of the found footage. Like that ship had sailed long ago. Like people didn't even remember the ship. So I mean, that's part of like why I was kind of like energized about like them bringing it back. Like, oh, let's bring it back to like, you know, the one who started it. Started the trend, the mainstream trend of it all and everything like that. But even this particular screening, that was one thing. I was like, here we are back in Burkittsville and the Black Hills Forest and all of the things that we alluded to in the first pod for the first movie that feel tropey now, but we're not tropes yet. In 2016, they were fucking tropes, and they are just troping them all. We're like, hey guys, let's blah 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 blah, and I was just like, I don't know. Even the use of the camera, like I could tell as found footage became its own subgenre, you could tell every time you'd watch one of those movies, whether filmmakers, and they seem to care less and less, but whether they gave a shit as to we need to justify why someone would film this to make it feel as authentic as Blair Witch Project did, because it full on fooled people into thinking I'm watching something real. Whereas this one, I don't think anyone would ever watch this movie and think it was real based on something real.
Well, I mean, that's already strike one against it is any sequel you make to Blair Witch, we're going to know it's not real.
But I mean, even even if you wanted to try and fool somebody, I don't think you could, because it's too performy for me. Like James in particular, for me, a lot of that kind of, you know, I'm looking for my sister kind of stuff. I should be feeling better. I mean, sibling shit gets to me, you know it does. And no, there was no connection. I found myself going like, well, where are the photos of the two of you together? Were there photos of them? Maybe there weren't. I just didn't care. But I don't know. And also just the bond. Like I didn't get a sense of like, you're a brother who's lost his sister. I really didn't.
I mean, to be fair, he was 4 when she disappeared. So like how much?
But if it means that much to him, for him to go out there, that relationship, even if it's just merely symbolic,
that looms over him his whole life.
Yeah, that needs to exist. And it just didn't for me. I don't think he's a bad actor or anything like that. Maybe there's some scene that didn't make it into the final cut or something. Or maybe they just didn't write what I needed, you know? I have no idea, but it just wasn't there for me in this film.
You speaking about James and not having that leads me to something. I actually paused the movie at 22 minutes. Well, I got up to and I came right back. I went up to the snack, but I looked at it was at 22 minutes on the bar and went, I've been watching this movie for 22 minutes and I don't know who the fuck any of these 4 people are.
Yeah.
And I remember being kind of filled with hope because when they earlier in the movie, when they first test out that drone in the parking lot, and I just see the four of them standing, I'm like, this is our cast. Like, I can't wait. Like, I like Josh and Mike and Heather. Like, I give a fuck.
Yeah.
I like Jeff and Kim and Erica. Like, I as an ensemble, like, I know who these people are, and I can't wait to find out who these four intrepid people are. And then, god damn, like, James is a guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't remember her name, but his friend's a girl,
Lisa and Ashley.
and she's making a movie.
Yeah,
And
Lisa's making the movie. Yeah.
and then is it
Peter.
Haha, I wrote it down. Peter, at least he's the doubting Thomas. He's the I don't believe this bullshit kind of guy. And he's, you know, and the fact that he can't hide his laughter. Like, okay, so here's a guy with like a personality trait that I can identify. But I was really surprised how like, and that's like strike one for me to not get invested.
I mean, I had enough there for me with
like,
Peter also. Well, also just with Peter, just because he also got to have that moment where he's talking about like what it was like to be around. He didn't really even remember Heather anymore, but he remembers what it was like when she went missing and everybody was searching for her.
Why isn't James getting a monologue like that?
Yeah, but it made Peter more interesting for me. So I was just kind of like, oh, okay, there, look, there's something. You're a good friend.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, but one of the problems you had in Book of Shadows was the tropiness of like a character kind of popping up from behind a seat and going, well, I'm a witch, and this is what I think. It's like, well, I'm a so-and-so, and this is what I think. And I'm like, you know what? At least I can identify who the fuck these people are.
Yeah.
Like, I will take tropey introductions to character beats versus like no character.
Well, I don't know about that because they're both they both kind of wear on me in a little bit. But the thing is, I could attach to Lisa because I felt like there was a secret that never got revealed. But I just wondered, she seemed to be the most proactive in terms of the pursuit of this story. Like she was kind of like the Heather of the group in the fact that she really was all about the equipment and really seemed to be about like, you know, telling the story and finding some answers, or at least, you know, again, the pursuit of it. And I'm like, okay, cool. Why though? Like, you have no connection to this, and you're not. I don't get a theater kid sense from you the way I did from Heather,
right?
And I don't. And we haven't had a big bold declaration the way Heather, you know, did. And even a tropey thing, like we don't have you going like them going like, well, you know that you're just spouting that film school jargon you're always on about, you know. It's no, we didn't even get that. And I thought it might be interesting to reveal at some point, why does this mean something to her? And we never got that either. So
I had to justify the fact that she needs interesting subject for her thing, and her friend's missing sister and how much she seems to miss her is the thing. Now, had there been anything beyond a little look inside the tent and a little, oh, we're cold and we're snuggling, had there been something set up before, even something as basic as two cishetes who might like each other, at least if she's kind of always like, I care about him because deep down, like, I care about him.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to shoot this documentary on him, because what if it can help him? Like, but
yeah, that could have been cool. That could have been cool. Instead, she just seemed kind of like to be positioned as the outsider in that club exchange she had, where it's like, oh, she doesn't know him as well as Peter or Ashley apparently do. But again, I didn't even get. Maybe I got a trace of it later in the movie with Peter again, with the hug, but it seemed so ill-timed. Like when James kind of like, I think it's after they realized that fucking Lane and Talia have been yanking their chain and that they made all the stick people and everything, and then the group separates. And you just get that moment with James where he's in profile, just kind of like, I guess I always just kind of believe that she was really out here. Whatever. And I'm like, okay, this is odd. And this is an odd thing to be filming without, you know, kind of like justification for this is for all posterity and I need your consent. Like if we had something at the beginning of you know, with her like saying, and I need your consent because it's a documentary, so if things get hard, I mean, this is your sister we're talking about, I need you to know that I'm going to be filming, and for him to be like, yeah, absolutely, no problem. But so then at least the groundwork is laid for why you would film a moment like that.
I had no problem with any of that, because the fact that they're all wearing cameras matches their heads.
Oh God,
they're just on. So like, of course, she's looking at him, she's having that moment.
But that's another thing.
I
The cameras are on all the time.
I have a few problems with it. Namely two. One, fine, you're wearing cameras on your heads. Sure. But like that shit, how many batteries are you bringing?
I know!
That shit will barely last you like what, 3 or 4 hours if they're just on all the time and at that size, whatever.
Yeah.
But besides the battery thing, and thank you for agreeing with me. The other thing that I don't care in the given moment that they're on, it's just, it's mostly to me when something comes up at night. You know what I'm not doing is
right.
Or if you're like, I would never fall asleep with it on.
Well, okay.
Like,
yeah, there was that one scene in the tent where fucking James and Lisa were asleep, full on asleep, and the camera was just recording them asleep.
Yeah.
It's like, you're gonna let your equipment run down like that? Like, what was wrong with the first movie where you hear like the darkness and you hear the fumbling because I hear something, you know, like,
yeah, if there's something going to a cloud, and I don't even think you're gonna get reception out there to be able to, not reception, but you know, why was it on that whole time? The infinite number of batteries, which here, I'm not saying I would have liked it, but you know, when she's showing her whole setup, not setup, but all the equipment they're bringing, there should have just been stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of batteries, just endless stacks of them.
Yeah, although there was another thing that was planted that was never paid off that I thought would have been great when Lisa's introducing them to, you know, the equipment and stuff, and she just says this line, "Keep an eye on the battery though in case we get separated." And I'm like, once they get separated, of course your mind isn't going to be on the battery, so somebody's battery is going to like go dead. And that didn't happen. How did that? They disappeared and there's no more footage and everything, but it's like, I don't know, it maybe, well, it's again, it's a detail, it's like just attention to details like that like really just kind of thread it together, make it feel endowed with reality, and make me go on the ride with you. And because there were these holes, these tiny little seemingly insignificant holes, it didn't feel like reality, it felt like a movie.
That's how I felt about the fact that the cameras have built-in GPS,
right? Yeah.
And then I thought that was going to come into play, otherwise why mention it?
Right.
And the way the movie handles it, since it never comes up, then why even plant that seed in my head?
I don't know if it's working, but the witch isn't making it. I mean, that's another thing. Is like, I know, again, it's a trope, but it's a trope that works. The reliance that we have on these things, and the fact that like we're continually in horror movies for like the last 20 or so years being put in situations where for whatever reason it don't work and we can't depend on it anymore. So now what do we do? And I didn't even get a sense of that because it felt like the GPS was always working. Well, it felt like it was something they could rely on. They never had that moment like where the map is missing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I liked the idea of, and didn't get enough of it. It was the fact that in the first movie, the Blair Witch can either fuck with your compass, or the compass is true, but you're going the wrong direction, or the woods are changing. But whatever the reason is, you've got a compass and she can fuck with it. And in this one, I like the idea that now that we have GPS, now that we have a drone that can go up into the sky, she can still manipulate the forest or manipulate what the drone's seeing. She can manipulate what your tech is telling you. That's a cool idea, but no one freaked out about coming back to that campsite or their GPS being wrong or not getting, like, I'm not saying you have to isolate and replicate the first movie all over again, but
I think the problem is, like, again, like I think I touched on this with the second movie, that like I don't need you to hit like all the most obvious points to like make it a Blair Witch film, and that like, so it's found footage, and so, you know, and it's grainy, and there's like all the movement and everything like that, which also, just sidebar, the movement with the head cams, I don't know what it is. Whenever somebody, maybe it's because this is there's at least effort to try and keep this steady when you're holding a device, but when it's just on your head, you're not thinking about like keeping it steady. So I got a little bit of motion sickness in this. I didn't get some motion sickness at all in the first one, revisiting it, and I didn't, of course, didn't get it in the second one. This one, I started to feel a little bit at one point, and I don't know, maybe it was just because I got my Moderna booster and it was, you know,
it could be.
But I mean, another thing that just kind of like brought back the first movie to me, it's like, okay, don't hit the same points if you don't want the movie to be like kind of relentlessly compared, your movie to be relentlessly compared to the first movie, don't hit the same points. Like, don't put us in the hotel room and show us like them interacting. I don't know. I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. And then, but I did forget all about the Confederate flag and the and the go away unwelcome mat with fucking Lane and Talia, whose names I'm gonna have to keep looking down to remember.
Sure.
But yeah, I forgot about all of that. So it's just kind of like, even the fact that they had to barter to kind of get there. I just remembered this kind of like banal group going out into the woods, and I didn't give a shit. This time, at least I was a little bit more involved because there was tension. I was like, oh, okay, so why would you ever make this decision, you know, and put your friends through this when they're so emphatically. I'm just trying to imagine a scenario where something means enough to me to like go out into the woods or something, and then ask you to come along with me and risk your life just going out into the woods with me. And then we find somebody who absolutely rubs you the wrong way and even like has full on like things that would be probably offensive to you, should be offensive to me, but for whatever reason I'm kind of okay with it. And I'm just like, no, Carlos, we're going to spend days with these two people who we just met, who lied, you know, and also we're going to find out how much they lied later, but who already have kind of like are kind of in a shifty, underhanded way, you know, finding their way, weaseling their way into our trip. It was going to be our thing, and now it's going to be something else because we've got this other component with these two people. And it's just, I don't know, it just made me think,
it's like, okay, I get it. Like, oh, we need them because they're not going to tell us. They were just going to tell us where to go. Now they need to show us where to go, or that deal's off. Fine. But at some point, you know, when there's a Confederate flag in the living room.
Yeah.
And the black character gets to be caught on camera making a face, but I'm not saying the movie's saying this, but it does seem to be like the white guy is like, no, I know he's got a Confederate flag, but
if you're a real friend,
yeah,
you know, which is the subtext, I guess.
We can
and
swap the two characters and then see how that scene plays out, you know?
Yeah, I think Peter's a much better friend than James is, also, just based on the evidence on screen. James is consumed by his own motive, you know, his key motive, which is to locate his sister because he has a feeling she's still out there or whatever. And that's another thing, nobody ever really has the argument. At least there was, I feel, some kind of argument in Book of Shadows about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but about like maybe how the woods, I guess it's all they did argue about, but about how the woods could be controlling them, and how do I know you aren't blah blah blah. I mean, at least it was always shouting at each other, but at least the accusations had a place, you know, like I feel like that's all they did. And I feel like there wasn't enough of that. There wasn't enough of like a conflict between these characters, the way it was handled so exquisitely, like in the first movie, you know, only kind of like putting a punctuation mark at the end of how much I was missing what felt like actual survival patterns. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah. No, the survival aspect is, you know, they have the first night and then the next day, and then some shit happens at night, and like, oh, it's the morning, but it's still night, and then we found a house.
Yeah,
it's, I don't know. I mean, that just triggered like 8 different thoughts. So,
I'm sorry.
It's all right. One of them to me is that it's less about survival than it is about hitting. Okay, you want to talk about tropes. Maybe not tropes of specifically the found footage genre, but tropes of horror in general, where the movie just stops to like, all right. So the first movie, like technically, depending on who you talk to, like nothing happens, but things happen. There are noises in the woods, kids' noises, things snapping, getting lost all day. You get to the house, like stuff happens.
Yeah.
Who put the pile of rocks here? You know, standing in the corner. We set up some sort of MO for how the witch operates. I understand when sequels want to expand the lore a bit. Fine. We already saw it once. Give me something new. But the fact that this one says, oh, I don't know, you step on rocks and now a creature grows inside your leg. So what I'm getting at is there's a lot of beats that aren't even really from the Blair Witch. They're just like big horror beats. Like if you've never seen a horror movie before, this could be like the one that gives you like all of them in one, like because
Like
it
you break suddenly voodoo is somehow introduced because if you break one of
yeah,
like the men that has your hair on it, you'll break in half.
right.
Great.
uh yeah, Lane becomes a bit of a slasher at the end of the movie. We're in a
Yeah.
spook house at the end running from stuff. There's a creature at one point, but there's also a little thing in her leg. Like it hits so many uh different kinds of scares, different kinds of beats, that it's like this
Mm.
blender of different, and none of it feels focused enough. It just is trying to get you. I wouldn't even been surprised if, I don't remember her name.
Lisa
James
or Ashley?
Ash Ashley.
Ashley's the one with the cut on the foot.
Yeah,
Lisa's the filmmaker.
it wouldn't surprise me if, and I know maybe it just came to them later, but Ashley pulling a thing out of her leg and Ashley going up in the tree are these two things that we cut away from James and what's her name, that it feel like it could have been anything as long as we insert horror scene here.
Yeah.
But also, besides the fact that it's all these sort of cliches and beats, it also, there's only so much you can add to it before I'm not going to go on the ride with you. And
Mm.
stepping on the rock and my foot getting infected, and now there's the creature from the ruins is in my leg. That's not Blair Witch for me. I could kind of get on board with the stickmen.
Yeah.
That's something new but I couldn't get on board with her, with the creature in her leg, and I couldn't get on board with the fact that in the first movie on night one, hey, I thought I heard something. Oh yeah, I thought I heard something too. And then like night two, oh, there's some things snapping. And then night three, like, oh, there's kids, and but this is like
Yeah.
night one. I'm like, it's right outside, and that is a creature, and like there's no subtlety. There's no.
No, no. Also, I mean, I got another sense, kind of like I did for Book of Shadows with the food tube about it, kind of alluding to the in a way like Exorcist with the neck thing. With this, with the foot thing,
Oh,
when
okay.
they first expose her, something else. But
Yeah.
when they first expose like her cut and everything like that, and she's all and everything, like, I mean, I thought the makeup initially, like on just the cut, because I don't like, oh, I don't like cuts on the palm of my hands or on the bottom of my foot. Oh God, no. Because it takes forever to heal. It just
Yeah.
bothers me, and seeing people like wince and stuff, it makes me wince. So that was kind of, I don't know if the word is immersive, but it started to work on me, and I was just kind of like, okay, cool, you're laying the groundwork for something to work on me, to get me involved, to get me kind of like, retching and everything like that. The problem is the other examples in this movie of that happening that I noticed were the fucking jump scares, and I started
And
listing them. The
so
first
did
one,
I.
I got 5 of them.
Oh, I got a
How
lot
many
more.
did? Oh, okay, cool. I probably just gave up taking notes after a while, but and
Yeah.
actually, but you know what? I did. And not, that's not a bad thing. At a certain point, I did just kind of get involved in the movie, and I didn't take notes
Hmm.
for a while, and then it turned, and I started taking notes again. But
Well, I,
I
I I
wrote,
chronicled two different kinds of jump scares. So
oh, okay, okay,
one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. 7 jump scares where in the movie, like in the scene,
yeah,
they bump into someone, or someone runs
yeah,
into,
yeah,
something that's if we're talking about diegetic versus non-diegetic, where it's actually in the scene, jump
yeah.
scares versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so 14. And that's kind. There was a few where I didn't count this, but this is way too many. 7, at least 7. There's been about 2 more that are a little quieter. 7 where it's just the start of the scene is digital noise.
Okay, okay. That, yeah, those
Fuck,
I did
like
not
I remember
list.
I
Yeah,
remember seeing this in theaters, and within the first like 20 minutes, I'm just like, fuck this fucking movie. Like, and the guest and You're Next are so smartly written.
yeah,
And the fact that this movie every 5 minutes is just like,
yeah.
and like we've everyone, even if you don't own a digital camera, you probably played with one at Best Buy or something, and like you've looked at playback footage, and they don't start with
Yeah, right.
7 times scenes just go.
Yeah. But I mean, I got Lisa at the tent. I think when she first like comes in, like, oh my god, James, you don't know what's going on out there.
Well, and he goes out, he looks left, he looks right, he comes
Yeah,
back in,
right.
and didn't see her going like,
Then there was James and Talia on their own, and Lane all of a sudden just kind of like, oh my god, you got, you know.
yep.
Then I have Peter and Lisa after Peter disappears. I don't even remember what happened there, but again, just like I guess he disappeared and then he comes back. Or did I write? There were a few times where I wrote down Peter when I meant James, and I wrote down James when I meant Peter, and I crossed them out.
Sure.
Maybe I meant that. Anyway, Talia's shriek.
Yeah.
Oh God.
I wrote Talia Screech. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
and you know that she didn't make that sound. That's just that's just like looped on.
Yeah. And then the We Have to Go,
yeah,
which I think was followed by a big like go, and they're all screaming because they don't know what the fuck is like out there and everything. Oh, God,
there's a very, very loud walkie-talkie that just goes off.
Right.
Yeah, there one of the ones, and I asterisked a couple of these where specifically it's not just a character going like, hey guys, and the mic gets slapped or something, but
Right.
where someone shows up and there is a completely unnatural sound when they arrive that has nothing to do with opening up a tent or turning around, but just added sound effect to person being present.
Yeah, it got really tiresome.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a real, like, in fact, when my takeaway from Blair Witch when you say it is, oh, the needlessly jump scary sound effect movie is the first thing that pops in my head.
I mean, and there were a few things here and there where I was just kind of, again, like total tropes, the no entry after nightfall sign, which I could have gone either way, honestly. Like if it had been a scarier movie up until that point and been scarier afterwards, I could have been like, oh, but because it's not.
I just like how serious you are.
Yeah, right. But because it's not, I'm just kind of like, and these idiots are going anyway. All right, good. I did think, yeah.
Speaking of added screams and stuff, though,
yeah,
I like the movie created its own like harbinger of doom right away. I remember sitting in the theater, right, watching this movie, and we're showing the end of Blair Witch, which I've seen like 100 times.
Yeah,
and I know how that last scene ends.
Yeah,
with Mike standing in the corner, and then Heather or something gets knocked over, and this time you hear a creature, and then she gets knocked over. I'm like, what the? Why is this movie adding a creature sound effect to the Blair Witch Project that was never there before? You're already deviating from the original source material. You're adding a new element. Like, I remember sitting in the theater going, and again, going in with open arms, instantly going, I got a bad feeling about this. Like, why are you adding a creature screech?
Yeah.
And it's an inhuman sound. Like,
you're painting more cleavage on the Mona Lisa. Like, don't. Don't. She doesn't need it. She's flirty enough, y'all.
Yeah. Her cleavage is fine. Never seen
there was one thing that I appreciated as someone who wasn't as familiar with the Curse of the Blair Witch mockumentary as you were going into either. I mean, I watched it after Book of Shadows, and I watched parts of it like after I saw initially like my first time seeing Blair Witch Project. So I didn't go in with any of that knowledge or anything like that to those movies, and I didn't hold on to it certainly because I just didn't hold on to it because my memory is bad. And so I appreciated the references to like Rustin Parr and Coffin Rock and Ellie Kedward, like the way they were kind of like retelling the story, but not going into big, long, like elaborate, like they're just kind of recounting it on the walk. And I'm like, okay,
Eileen Treacle drowned in this thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Like this is an interesting, they even brought up Eileen Treacle too. And I liked the allusion to Underground Railroad, just in terms of like, these underground tunnels that don't really go anywhere. Because at one point I was wondering, even with the Confederate flag, I was like, how far south is Maryland? And I didn't realize, because I mean, like, it's Baltimore, it's like just below New Jersey, isn't it? But I didn't realize it also borders Virginia. which is the South. And then, and that borders what, like, I don't remember, Kentucky. I don't
West
remember.
Virginia. Yeah.
Yeah, West Virginia and a bunch of other, and then
Which
we
is
get into the
definitely
South.
more southern than
Yeah,
Virginia.
yeah. So I appreciated that because I mean, even as I was thinking about it before I realized it borders Virginia, so it's not that far-fetched. Luckily, I've been doing some research on New York City just because I'm going out there, and I saw just accidentally prior to seeing this movie, there was Underground Railroad in New York City because there were assholes who would go to slave catchers who would like go up
Sure.
north, try to find them and everything like that, and then even in big cities like New York and everything, so they still needed places where they could be safe and where they could hide. So I'm like, oh, okay, so if it's Baltimore, that's fine. If it's Maryland, that's fine.
I mean, I'm glad you can justify it because I still, and that helps me a bit because I'm not sure what it is about the mid to late 2000s into the early 2010s where everything had to have like Friday the 13th had like underground tunnels, like
right.
every modern brand extension had to have the underground tunnel.
But I mean, again, this one, see, Friday the 13th, like those underground tunnels, it's just kind of like, wow, like how those are like caves, like those,
Yeah.
like you don't even have to hunch over to like walk through them and everything like that. And it makes me wonder, like, where are the support beams? Like how do you walk around without like, just like the whole thing kind of collapsing on you? At least the exposure to the tunnels that we see, particularly like underneath the house, kind of give the illusion almost like of a burrowing, like a place to hide and stay for a time, but not a place to like walk upright and move freely about, as though you were just in a house that was above ground,
and
like
I'm
whatever,
sure
you're in the den.
Over time those tunnels maybe have packed up a bit more, but even back when it might have been used for its intended purpose, you weren't going to have a good time down there. Like it was going to be an awful trek.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, so I kind of appreciated that because that was one thing that the first movie didn't really give me, which was the history that we got from Curse of the Blair Witch. We got elements of it, but of course also the way I watch movies, when I'm sitting there watching Heather do her movie voice and explain Coffin Rock, I'm focusing on the fact that like, wow, this really means something to her. I'm totally not listening to the information. I'm not absorbing it at all because I'm just thinking, look at this, look how into it she is. So the fact that those details were delivered within the framework of the movie, just in case it had been a long time since you saw the first movie, or if this is the first Blair Witch franchise movie that you're seeing, because in 2016 enough time had passed, there were a lot of people who were babies when the first one got released and probably had never seen it. So at least there's some background to kind of like give you a little of this, a little of that, or refresh it if you already knew it. Just kind of like, okay, cool. Yeah.
I was wondering if this movie and the way they dollop the lore, how that would play to someone who's never seen the original.
Yeah.
Because even the way Heather speaks about it feels like there's a sense of mystery or something weird.
Right.
But this is like, oh yeah, this happened back then, and then like I appreciated that.
Yeah.
At least these people knew the history, but maybe it's just because I watched two somewhat recently. But one of the things I missed was the idea of like the passion behind these. I like the idea of these fans going out there and getting caught up and they know everything.
Right. But that wasn't. They keep going.
I miss that energy versus just like I sort of get it from Talia.
Yeah.
Maybe not the passion, but she respects the
yes. That was something that I liked
seriously enough.
That we haven't really seen yet in terms of like people existing within it, is seeing people who grew up there, know the legends, and want to go out there anyway. And I wrote down, like, if Lane and Talia know and believe the stories the way they seem to be, like offended when they're being laughed at and not taken seriously and everything like that, why did they want to go out there? And I feel again like something was planted when he teased to, I don't remember who one of them, just like, for maybe we're offering you up to her, or whatever the fucking line is, like, maybe we're making an offering or something. And I'm like, is that what it is, or what?
She's using them to lure them. Yeah.
But maybe she's using us to lure you. And it's like, well, but why? And I don't feel like the movie answered that for me either.
Well, the only justification I got, and I have to say justification I got, because I have to make the justification, is that yeah, he grew up there. You know, you guys didn't. I did.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then you find that he's been out there camping, but nothing's ever really happened. Is that I took it as more like a disappointment. Like, yeah, I know this stuff, and I've been out here, and like nothing ever happens,
Hmm.
and I want
Okay.
something to happen
That's yeah. That could have
because
been
it's a belief, but I'm never seeing what I believe, and all this stuff happened.
okay.
And you hear all these stories, and nothing's ever happening when I'm fucking out here, and all these things have supposedly happened.
See, you should have ghost written a draft of this script because because that element, even again, just merely alluded to, would have helped,
Mm-hmm.
again, just pack it with like, okay, motivations and where you're coming from and why you're here, and everything like that. And instead, it feels like it's teased and then never paid off in a way that satisfies me anyway. But oh, you had a reaction when I mentioned the Exorcist moment with Reagan and everything. Was there another moment like that in this movie for you, or what was
I
that?
might
You
have been
kind of went,
reacting to something else, or like it
oh, okay,
triggered
because you,
something
you were all
else.
like, oh, and then I started to talk about her foot, about Ashley's foot. You're like,
I
oh, whatever, and I
No,
don't
no,
know
no.
what.
I thought you were going to go in a different direction, but that triggered
Oh,
at me talking about the opening where they add the sound effect
oh, okay, okay, okay,
and just how like
yeah,
that was going to be a problem for me. Just the way like something in the foot was going to be a problem for you.
yeah. Well, I mean, but
Um,
it was, yeah, it was a
but
problem, but it was also it just didn't pay off. Yeah.
while we're
What
talking
were you gonna
about the
say?
lore, though, this it's funny when certain things can upset fans and when things don't.
Hmm.
And I try to be critical, but I know there's some things. Okay, so I got not upset, but in this movie, they're recounting Rustin Parr,
Yeah,
and the voice is telling him, and
yeah,
then they said and then supposedly if you look at the witch in the
right.
eyes, you get so scared you die. That's why Rustin Parr stood in the corner. I'm like, no,
No,
Rustin
he
Parr
didn't.
made the children stand in the corner.
Right.
Why are we saying Rustin Parr stood in the corner? That's not a thing. And I don't want to say I got all butthurt about it, but I'm like, eh,
Well, see, what I liked
eh.
about that is that, again, it's one of those little details because I feel like it was also planted alongside like them talking about where it happened in the house with Heather and with the guys and everything like that. Um, and I think they were saying, I can't remember if they were saying the cellar or the attic, and then Lane. Like I think Talia said one or the other, and
Right,
he said some people have said it's the cellar, but other people say it's the attic and everything like that. And I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, because it's all secondhand knowledge. So I
right.
like the kind of like getting it wrong. I mean, they didn't punctuate it in a way that we knew, you're getting it wrong.
I'm fine
That,
with
but yeah,
I'm fine with certain people and certain things getting it wrong,
yeah.
but when you've already had several other people and like I think townsfolk talk about, oh yeah, you used to make the kids stand in the corner. Like I don't
Hmm.
know. I felt like that's established enough within the community that like I don't know. But you're right.
Okay.
Someone could be like, oh, well, the way I heard it was Rustin Parr stood in the corner, but
Right, right,
I
right,
just
right.
don't like it.
Okay. You're allowed.
I'll allow it.
I'll allow it.
There's
There
a
was, yeah,
no.
go
Go
for it,
ahead.
go for it.
No,
Well, okay, no,
you.
there was one thing I have to say though that like did start to kind of like get my dander up because, like I said, I didn't hate this movie. It was just like there were some tiresome things. I think the tiresome ones are the ones I made the most notes about. The rest of the time, I was just kind of sitting there, and the movie was happening, and I was like, all right, whatever. Um, but one thing that I thought worked that I did make a note about was when they got in the tent and they heard the noises. Even though I agree with you, the progression would have been nice. But again, I also understand
There's like a giant
the
wildebeest screeching outside the tent.
I would also understand the need in a sequel where everything has been set up so we can't have that same progression. I don't think they solved the problem by just having everything happen on the first night. But there's just something about being afraid in a tent with a camera, not knowing what's going on, that keys into something very elemental with me. Like, I mean, I anytime I've been scared when I've gone camping, I've always done exactly the thing you're not supposed to do in horror movies, which is I either got drunk or high or both. And but as long as I kept the fire lit and there were people awake with me, like there's safety there. It's all about like kind of deadening that part of your brain, that movie, that moviegoer horror movie fan part of your brain, so you don't have to think about it. So in case something bad happens, what? But but just the sounds and the tension, everything like that, that was one of the only things I think about the movie that really kind of worked, just because that thing works for me. I mean, again, I wouldn't have done it exactly the way they did it if I were to remake this movie or re-edit it or something. Or if I were making it with them, I might have said something like, guys, we could make a little bit more of a progression to this. But
you're onto something.
Yeah.
Because I will agree, even though I thought that makes some sense why the camera's on.
Yeah.
You have to keep looking out. James and Lisa, like it's scary. Let's try to. I'm not going to sleep. You're not going to sleep, but at least I got you.
Yeah.
I buy like being scared in a tent. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sure. There's a let me find some nice things. Find some nice things. I will say,
yes.
If the first one is a documentarian who's passionate and she's like sort of filming offhand moments too, I get why these moments are being captured. At least with the fact that I am putting it on Front Street. Like I am bringing you all. We are going to make this documentary. Here are headset cameras.
Right.
That allows for a believable way of the filming style of the movie. And also, since it's a more modern movie, it feels like it has a little more narrative. But since they're all wearing headset cams, it allows the movie to tell its narrative and to be able to cut from basically like, close-ups of actors talking.
Yeah.
Her structure for the documentary allows the movie to operate as a movie. And I think that works.
I agree.
So kudos to them for that.
Still, there's things that could have been tweaked that would have made it work even more for me. Like now I'm just thinking about Ashley and how kind of like she's the one endowed with the least motive to be out there. She's just kind of going along because she's the girlfriend, I guess. It would have been nice if there could have been something, if they asked her like, so why are you going out here? With all of the, she could just be like, I don't know. I think it's exciting. I think it's scary. I want to see something. Then
at
when
least
shit starts to happen to her. Yeah.
Kim even at least goes, I thought the movie was cool. Like, something.
If we could have gotten something like that, then when shit starts to hit the fan, we could be like, see, and that again, more engrossing in the movie. Yeah.
Especially when I had a real problem with this in theaters, and it didn't bother me as much this time, but I hate the logic police, but the logic police alarm went off when all hell done broken loose.
Yeah.
And tents are flying. And holy shit. And I pulled the thing out of my leg and I'm all alone and I'm limping. And I see the drone in the tree.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you going up in the tree?
I
understand if it's like night one. And I even understand, but like the one with the bad foot, when all hell is breaking loose around you, you're not climbing in the fucking tree. Aside from the fact that we need this beat to happen, and then
the only thing, it's a reach, but like the thing that I worked out in my head was like, we know that she's motivated to try and find Peter, and she was asking repeatedly about the drone, and when she found out it was missing, she thought it was bullshit. Also the fact that she's kind of possessed, she's not completely there. I don't know.
She seems more lucid in that moment than she ever does in the tent.
When she's climbing the tree,
technically, she's got the evil fucking gecko out of her leg or whatever the fuck. So maybe that's why she's more lucid. I don't know.
What was it? Was it a worm or an insect or what?
I don't know, Eddie. What?
And it wasn't even, that's the thing, is it wasn't even, I mean, body horror, again, it can work on me, but
jamming 5 minutes of body horror into the middle of this movie didn't work for me.
No, it was so new, and it was so, I mean, again, if there's a way to do it, and they didn't hit it for me.
Sure, I agree. I agree. There would probably be a way to do it. But also I get a little angry because the cause of it is just so fucking stupid, which is you're going to cross this creek, which is littered with rocks at the bottom of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, don't take your shoes off. And then I understand wet socks and shoes are annoying.
Totally.
And
But
if
you've
you're
got your
walking all
pack
day
on.
and you're
Don't
gonna
you?
get your little raisin toes. Wah. But wet shoes are better than potentially cut feet. And when you take your socks and shoes off, I just go, oh, you're gonna cut your feet on the rocks at the bottom of that lake. So just don't do it. Just endure.
Mm.
Like I don't. And
I
it's the
mean,
fact that they even show them later, like hanging their socks up to dry. I'm like, you see, you take your. Oh my god, this is very foolish to me. I can't get on board these people who cross a creek and take their shoes off.
I mean, that didn't bother me so much as the fact that like she cut her foot on a rock, and that's the reason she gets like possessed in the foot. It's like, how? I mean, I guess,
Because Eddie, because this is a thing the witch does. Apparently, I don't.
and I guess because she kind of exists in the lake because somebody saw a hand once pull what's Eileen Treacle into the water, so maybe she's kind of always there. I mean, again, like this is all a reach. This is all a reach, but the fact that nothing was introduced in the movies prior to kind of like make that make sense, and the fact that it was happening with just this weird mysterious but not, it didn't feel mysterious in this movie. It felt underwritten and it felt kind of misled. Like it was a moment, it's like, whoa, couldn't this have happened some other way? I don't know, for some other reason. It just seemed like one more thing to just kind of like introduce as like, look, it's horror. And it's like,
Yeah, again, that's what the movie feels like. Is look, here's a bunch of different horror tropes that are all kind of thrown in here.
yeah,
And the problem with the first Blair Witch is we don't really understand how she operates, but they give us a framework of, not a framework, but they give us a few examples of things.
yeah,
There's too many examples of things. There's too many different varieties and degrees
yeah,
of things that it feels like she can do anything and everything, including a literal creature in the woods. Um,
yeah.
it starts to not scare me when it's just the kitchen sink of anything.
I get that. That said, one really simple thing that I worked on me was after kind of like the discovery of like, okay, being scared in a tent still works for me. I like that once they realize that Lane is gone, I had just like a fuck moment because I'm like, somebody's gonna go look for him. I don't want to see that, but I know it's gonna happen. You know, like I started to kind of get involved, and then the fact that like James asked Peter and Ashley, like, we should probably go look for him, right? And they're just like, no,
Yep,
good night, yeah, you good luck. And they just said something. And I was like, thank you.
that'd be
Thank you
me.
for not following the dumb white boy into the woods, to like go find someone who he doesn't even have an attachment to. But I guess maybe that makes him a decent person. I don't know. I really don't know that much about James.
No, we don't.
Um,
However, I am absolutely with Peter and Ashley in that moment.
totally. Check their names.
Yep.
But yeah, no,
That
that was a
and
moment that
also
worked for me. Yeah.
yeah. Besides him being a racist, it's just like he's an idiot and I barely know this guy. And nope, we're gonna stay
Oh,
here.
and then we find out they're the worst people ever. That like they were the ones who put together like the stick people the first night or whatever. And I guess that makes it make more sense that like all of a sudden the kitchen sink is being thrown at them and everything like that. And they're like,
Yeah.
we faked those, but we didn't fake this. It's like, how could we believe you? That was the closest thing to like maybe like an actual conflict that I was
Eddie,
looking for. Yeah.
doesn't it feel like once that's revealed,
Mhm.
that's your movie. If you wanted it to be. You could have done more with them lying to you, and then when shit keeps happening, or just go in a completely different direction with them as like your villains. And now we're just stuck out here, and now as you're trying to escape them, haunted shit is happening to you. So that's how you're adding to the first movies, because you're being pursued. Like
that's another thing though. Maybe there was a moment where something happened after they all separated, and they were just kind of like, it's just Lane and Talia, whatever, like it. But it didn't happen in a way that it hit, because I feel like there's a more effective way to do that, to like have them to establish a conflict between like our core four group, four people, where someone is terrified because they believe something is going on. Someone else is absolutely convinced that Lane and Talia are behind this. How do we know it was just the two of them? How do we know that they didn't have people, out in the woods this whole time? Like, let's go out there. Let's look for them. We got our flashlights. Let's shine it on them. And let's, expose these fuckers for what they're doing. There is so many more ways to develop again, natural instincts that people would have when they are in a
Yes.
predicament like that. And this movie just didn't, that's the thing. It
Although
didn't explore the possibilities for me. It kind of
yeah,
stuck. It went in another
it stayed in
direction.
kind of a safer, basic Blair Witch wheelhouse, and then threw in some
Yeah.
kitchen sink stuff that I didn't need. But
Yeah. And
they
yeah.
did do one thing though that, like you said, was like a natural instinct that you wish the movie had more of. But there's one little one that I really like. Here's another nice thing I like about the movie. Night one,
Yeah.
loud creature. We wake up, there's fucking stickmen everywhere.
Yeah.
And James, like, let's get the fuck out of here. And even
Yes.
Peter's like, yep. And they're like, we are not prepared to deal with this. Let's
Yeah.
fucking leave. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that is the appropriate
Yes.
response to all this.
I agree. I agree.
I like
Yeah.
that. I like that
Me
they wrote that
too.
in there, and then you can't leave. But oof, how nice.
Yeah. Yeah. See, okay, yeah, little things like that. More of that. More of that would have put this over over the moon. I don't know what I'm saying, but anyway.
Because you're over the hill.
I'm over the hill.
There's something I'd like to pivot to.
What is it?
The creature that Lane, goes, well, I heard that when the Blair Witch was out there that they strung her up and that, they made like a rack. So, for the longest time, when someone asked me what I didn't like about this movie, I said, aside from about all the jump scares, like they show the goddamn witch, which I think is a colossal mistake. What do you mean they show you? Well, like you don't get close-ups of it, but at the end of a hall and behind a tree,
Yeah.
got these long arms, these long legs, and it's just, that's not remotely scary to me. But especially in hindsight, it just feels like Lane explaining that is just an excuse for us to have a long leg, long armed hag thing in this movie.
Right.
So I didn't like between that and the sound, the giant like creature like sound. I didn't like that the witch is literally a beast.
Yeah.
And then what I got really confused by is because since I don't care about this movie, I haven't gone down any deep dives within the fandom the way I have about the first two movies. So I didn't realize until recently that in the commentary and in interviews, Simon Barrett has said that that's not the witch. I'm like, okay, so then it's something else. But then Lane says, so I don't know. I just get confused. It's just
what
then what's the point of it?
What did they think the audience is going to think it is?
When Lane says, I heard they stretched its arms and legs out.
And that's not
Simon Barrett.
And also, I call bullshit.
Okay.
Because in the very end, the whole, if we're not led to believe that that's the witch, Lisa certainly is, because she's repeating to herself that we're jumping to the end here, but the very end, but she's repeating to herself, like, you can't look at her. And he's saying it too, right before he gets pulled back, James, like, you can't look at her or else then she can consume you, or whatever the fuck the line is. And she's like, and so she's holding up the camera so she can look at her without looking at her. And that makes presumably the alleged Blair Witch go, and disappear. Who is it, and what are the rules that it lives by? Why don't we ever get any kind of reference to that? And if our final girl, or whatever, the person who we're experiencing on screen at the last, is behaving as though it's the Blair Witch and it's not, and you don't pay that off either, that's just one more thing to make me angry.
If you're not going to give me the thing that it really is, or haha, Lisa's wrong, this is what you get, this is the price you pay for thinking that was the witch, something. But yeah, I have seen how like the ending is what it is, and that they don't, he's like, and I get, like, I don't want to explain what it really is, but if you go out and say that that's not really the witch, and I'm also not explaining it to you,
hearing that makes me angrier than sitting through the first Maleficent movie and seeing the dragon is her minion and not her. You know, like, don't. Maleficent is the dragon. The Blair Witch should be the only thing that would be
Although,
scarier than the Blair Witch at the end would be fucking Josh.
with no tongue and teeth.
Because ever since you told me that, I rewatched the pod while I was setting up and everything. Just, you know, because I like to have something on just to kind of get me in the mood and whatever, to remember, like, what did we talk about and what did we say and how did I think about this movie? Did I talk about it? That kind of thing. And God, that pod is a love letter to the first movie. But ever since you told me that, and I was remembering it, I was like, I am more scared watching the first movie pod of the Blair Witch Project that we did than I am watching either of the sequels. Like,
yeah,
the actual sequels.
We do
like
creep
the
ourselves
movie.
out a bit in that one. Yeah.
We totally do. And
Yeah.
I was getting scared again. It was nice.
I've always had a problem with Josh alone in the house with a bloody mouth and teeth missing, screaming out to his friends.
Yeah.
And like you could see in his eyes, like he's not in control of his own facilities. Like that has always bothered me. That's the Josh in my head for that movie.
Like in a good way, in a good way.
Oh yeah, very effective way. In fact, that was another thing that, like, I know several years have passed since the Blair Witch Project came out, and you probably couldn't do this now without digitally de-aging them. But like, if they had run into the house and time is all fucky, and he actually did run into Heather, or went to the basement and did see Josh down there, that would have broke my fucking brain. The way Paranormal 5 in Paranormal 1, if they had done that with this.
That's all I could think is like, okay, I've seen whatever they're alluding to, because he thinks he sees her and then it never pans out. But I could have sworn at one point I heard screaming, and because screaming sometimes just sounds nondescript and just like, you know, like a girl screaming. I thought it was, and again, this would have been interesting if he would have been, oh God, this would have broken my heart. Even if he didn't see her, but if he heard her screaming his name. Because I heard somebody screaming, but I couldn't tell if it was, and I didn't know what was going on, because I'm like, we've introduced this time travel aspect, and I can't tell if Heather is screaming for Josh, but it sounds like somebody's saying James. So is that Lisa screaming for James? But it sounds like it's inside the house now. So is it the Blair Witch screaming in Lisa's voice to try and bait him? But wouldn't it be sadder if it were Heather and more effective, because he's chasing Heather, and in the first movie Heather thought and Mike thought they were chasing Josh. So it just created this like weird conspiracy theory thread, you know, map in my head that was exhausting instead of being scary or heartbreaking or even involving. It just made me tired, and I thought, this doesn't make sense. And it happened. That's, I think, why I checked out as early as I did the first time I watched it. This time around, a little bit more, but then about an hour in, at about the hour mark, we still had, you know, about a half hour to go. That's when I started to get wary of this film and its direction.
Well, I think one of the reasons why I don't jive to, like, you know, the bug in the leg, and aside from just like the kitchen sink of it all, is the fact that it's too big for Blair Witch. Like, Blair Witch was a very modest thing, and a CGI bug being pulled out of a leg, it's just too much for me. And so the same thing is when we get up to the attic and these giant UFO lights show up. I'm just like, I'm kind of curious, but I'm also just like, oh, whatever answer you have is not going to make any sense to me within the box that the first movie was.
At least this time, it didn't make sense, but I could tell myself, oh, is that what it looks like when the house is traveling? All the lights, just kind of like put it in like some weird, you know, portal or whatever, or some kind of energy builds around, and now it's in another time, but we don't know because we're inside the house. I don't know. I don't know.
In fact, once you get into the house, it does play like a greatest hits of like, hey, do you remember the hands on the wall? Yeah.
Right.
Remember someone standing in the corner? Well, he looks
Yeah.
over and there's someone standing in the corner or against the wall, and he goes,
Yeah.
Peter, and then like the lighting changes and it's gone. And I was even confused
Yeah.
by that because they look like they were wearing a jean jacket. I'm like, Peter wasn't wearing a jean. I actually rewound the movie. I'm like, oh, he's wearing a gray hoodie. That guy's not wearing a
Oh.
gray hoodie. So if it isn't Peter, oh
Oh.
well, they're gone now. It doesn't matter. It's a spook house at the end, is what it is.
Right.
It's just there's a creature going down the hall and you go, ah, and then you go
And
into the
also,
room. And here's
yeah, because go ahead.
you see someone pass across the hall. They look like some sort of woman and they're in like raggedy clothes.
Yes, yeah.
That's eerie. More of that. And then we eventually go to this room and then we're hiding. We check under the bed. We go to the door and we go back. The lightning flashes. And for a few
Yeah.
frames, you see this hideous horror hag.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking, well, that's the Blair Witch. And if you're going to tell me
Right.
that the Blair Witch down the hall isn't the Blair Witch, what is it? And who is this lady? Because this
Yeah.
lady, for that few frames, kind of creeped me out.
Yeah, me too.
And
But
then it just becomes, well, what did I write here? Oh, except for one little dumb thing I didn't like about it. When the witch, when she shows up, you know how like when people are like, hi, but they also superimpose like,
yeah.
when she shows up, like the movie doesn't really have score, but when the lightning flashes, the sound effect is almost like a horror movie music cue.
Right.
Like for 3 seconds, she gets a music cue, and I'm like, oh, well, that pulled me out because whatever.
It feels all of a sudden like cinematic and not, found footage.
But I found the witch in these robes to be way more intriguing, and I want to know more about that.
I mean,
I don't ever want to see the witch, but if the idea is also that like Ellie Kedward maybe wasn't ever a witch, that she just got accused of it, went out to the woods,
right,
and then something evil is using her,
Ooh.
or evil, she got consumed, and now the vengeance is her vengeance versus she's
right.
conduit for something. I like
whatever. Yeah. Again,
whatever.
you should have written a draft because both of those are more interesting than the weird kind of ambiguity we get. That's another thing that kind of like made me go, and this was after the hour mark. It's when Ashley's in the now infamous tree, and she disappears out of the frame because a hand reaches down, and I think, does it push her or grab her? I can't remember what it does. But a hand goes into the frame, and I'm just kind of like, so is that the Blair Witch? Where's the horsehair? Like, I'm hairier than that hand was. But
maybe maybe that's another reason why that creature in the hall is not the Blair Witch, because it's not covered in hair.
But neither was the whatever.
That old lady's cup is in a big.
Yeah, she had a big droopy thing, but she didn't look. I don't know. But it just bothered me because I was just kind of like, also just the yoink of it all. I don't know.
Yeah,
it was so not what I turned to a Blair Witch Project movie for.
It's like the bad version of what I was scared of in the first Blair Witch when they're crossing the river, and I was afraid a hand would just come out of the river and grab them. But not to that degree.
No, but anticipation of something like that is always going to be scarier than because you're imagining that hand and your mind is going to conjure whatever the scariest version of that hand would be, as opposed to just seeing someone else's idea of the hand, and everyone in the audience is seeing the same hand, just kind of pull her out of frame, I guess. And also, like, what is she doing? Wait, so is she floating or is she like huddled up in the tree? Like, there's other ways to have her above her that she could have just reacted and just screamed and then just fell or something. I don't know. But yeah.
You just reminded me. I have a question for you because I don't know what the fuck was happening in this scene.
Yeah.
I actually had to go back and rewatch it today because I'm like, did I dream that? Because so the group splits up. They're running. The tents fly. The tents drop down. Ashley gets separated from James and Lisa, and we were James and Lisa. Then we cut to Ashley, and it's after she pulls the bug out of her,
right?
And then we cut back to James and Lisa, and and stuff happens. Like he looks at the radio and the radio makes like a really loud noise, and then
Yes.
like the audio kind of dips out, and he's freaking out, and I don't know what he's freaking out to or why. And then we're cutting to like Ashley,
Hmm.
and we cut back to Peter, and we hear the sound effect of like the wood or ground snapping, and he
Yeah.
drops out of frame. And I'm like, oh my God, did he get pulled into the ground? And then we just
Yeah.
cut to Lisa, and then he's there. We cut right back to him. She's looking right at him. So he didn't go anywhere. All I know is that the camera did this a lot,
Yeah.
and they all acted scared at nothing. And at the end of that scene, I just went, what just happened?
I'm going to read a sentence to you.
Okay, please do.
Hearing Peter over the radio, and then boom, crack, and what? That's my
Boom,
answer.
squish.
Yeah, I am as much at a loss as you are.
I is that okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, because he thinks it might be Peter. Here's the thing. So let's say you're in the tent, and like the characters in the tent don't know what's going on outside, but like I can be with them because like I see hands mushing on it and I hear noise.
Yeah.
So at least I understand what's happening, even though I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in this scene, I don't understand or know what's happening, but I'm seeing actors react to things, and whatever it's happening, it's either off screen or it's sonic, but I don't get to be informed.
No.
So it's just a bunch of gobbledygook.
Mm.
And I don't know what happened. And I very rarely to watch a movie and I watch a thing and just go, I don't know what's happening.
I don't know if the filmmakers know what's happening.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
even if it's nothing, like it's, but remember, okay, here's a great version of that.
Mm.
Evil Dead 2. Arms up against the door, just and this her screaming against
Yeah.
visually nothing, but we understand that something's trying to get in, and even though it's not a physical presence, it's like an energy. But this, I just see actors being scared at fucking is very frustrating.
Evil Dead 2 even did that better with the
Oh yeah. I mean, Blair Witch 1, when they run out of the tent,
yeah,
we don't see what Heather goes, what the fuck is that over?
No, but oh my God, the way she does, yeah.
But the light can only hit so much grass, and it's so dark, and like I get it, but again with this, I don't get it.
I started to appreciate the movie again when Lisa, after all of this, ended up shut up in the trapdoor, little
best part of the movie
space, and then starts to crawl through the shrinking tunnel
for 5 minutes. This movie is firing.
I don't have a fear of enclosed spaces per se. I know you do.
So they really worked on me.
But the closest thing, like I really like being, especially if I'm sleeping, I love being wedged. If there's like a bed frame and a mattress that I can wedge between. I used to do this with my waterbed all the time when I was a teenager, because you could like kind of shimmy in between the frame that holds the water mattress and the mattress itself, and just kind of lay there, like in a little cocoon or something like that. And it made me feel safe. So I would sleep like that, and if I didn't fall asleep that way, I would definitely wake up that way, just wedged, and I like enclosure. I like feeling safe. I don't like my feet out with the bedspread. I like it under. I like a burrito of bedspread around me.
And
so
I feel like I'm gonna get smothered. I would not be able to fall asleep to that. My brain would be worried that I'll always be like trapped in that. And I just
see, and I love the encasement. I love the safety because it feels insulated. It feels like something can't get in.
So this scene
made you feel a
little warm and fuzzy in the tunnel?
No, because the only time I ever, and it evoked this memory for me, because the only time I really kind of think like, oh, I'm not really, weird about like, I don't get claustrophobic or anything like that in many situations. But whenever I watch Aliens, right? It's in Aliens when
the sequel to Aliens.
Aliens, when Lance Henriksen has to get inside that pipe.
Oh yeah, fuck that. I could never.
No, and I couldn't either because look how fucking long that
Long.
pipe is. I would die. And then the fact that they seal it back. No,
Yeah.
no, kill me. Let the aliens take me. I got a similar sense with this because even though like when she first got in, I thought, ooh, creepy because there's all of the roots. Like that was the first thing, just seeing all the roots kind of like growing down. It just makes me feel like I'm in the Blair Witch's element, you know. I don't
Mhm.
like it. So that, and then as it started to get smaller, I thought, well, she's going to back up because I didn't remember any of this. So I'm like, oh, she's going to back up and she's like trapped. No, she's trapped because she's still going and she's throwing the camera ahead of her with the light
With a
so
light.
we can watch her struggle. And oh, that was one thing that I actually appreciated in the tree too. There were just moments where the actresses did something that felt incredibly naturalistic, which was both of them. The actress playing Ashley and the actress playing Lisa had moments where they were panicking
Mhm.
because they're stuck in their respective ways. And they have to kind of panic a little bit and then calm down and get themselves back together. They got a little of it out because you have to, but they got a goal and then they kind of reset
Yeah,
and then
and
they start going
Lisa
again.
does that very well in that
Yeah.
tunnel.
But I felt it like with Ashley too. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
the situation was lacking, but I was like, I respect the work you're doing. But Lisa and the movie is working for her then and everything like that. I'm just like, oh my god, I'm immersive. I'm in the tunnel with you. Go figure. And just waiting for her because all I can think is, what if she gets to the very end and it's closed? You know, like I'm. That's the thing. My imagination is doing work now. You've got me,
Hmm.
movie.
Yeah.
And then
Which
when
is
she
kind of what
finally
is great about the first Blair Witch movie.
exactly. So when she finally gets to the point that she gets to and finds a way up and realizes, because I thought I didn't know how far she went, but I realized, oh my god, she didn't even make it out of the cellar. Like all of that was happening
Hmm.
like within like maybe 12 feet, maybe, you know. So that all of that feels incredible, like the horror's working for me and it's not even showing me look at the horror, but it's just putting me in a situation that I would never want to be in and showing me somebody fighting to get through it, and then when they finally reach their point, what they think is their destination, they realize all it did was just kind of get them across the room,
Yeah.
and then they still have to fight, but now at least they've got their knife out, she's got her knife out, and when fucker boy Lane comes out of nowhere like trying to attack her, I didn't even have to see it. I knew, you've got the knife, use it. And you know what she did? She used it, and he backed away with it in his neck. And so now I know what's going on. The things I'm not seeing, I can anticipate because you set them up properly and I get it. So all of that, and the fact that also Lisa fucking goes there when James jumps back in. It doesn't make much sense, but I'm so engrossed, I don't care. And then the fact that he has her turning around and starts apologizing, I'm like getting echoes of Heather, kind of. You know, so I'm like, okay, cool. Like, this is the most interesting you've been the whole movie. Because even though I don't believe it's necessarily all your fault, they all made the choice to come out here. I get where you're coming from because Heather felt the same way. And it kind of is your fault. But the fact that what follows after he hears what I don't was it Heather's
Heather.
voice? Yeah, he
Yeah.
hears Heather and looks back, and that's what consumes. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm on
Yeah.
board. It all
Yeah.
makes sense. The fact that Lisa, not only everything that we've already described with the photo, you know, the camera, like, you know, and looking because she needs to see her, but she can't see her. Um, she's doing this thing I can't even replicate because I don't really remember what it sounds like, but she's doing this weird high guttural thing, and I just wrote not since Samara Weaving in
Oh,
yeah, the
ready or not with the
Ready or Not, thank you.
yeah.
You know, just like that. It's adjacent to that, you know. And I was just kind of like, and it sounds so involuntary and so like a sound that you would only make under extreme duress that I am like, you went there. Like, good for you, actress who plays Lisa. I don't know her name, I should look it up because attention must be
Callie
paid.
Rodriguez?
Sure, that. I'm going to look it
Callie
up for sure. Callie, yes, Callie
Hernandez.
Hernandez, yes, and Corbin Reed, who played Ashley. Shout out, and Brandon Scott, who because Peter, you were the most interesting character, and James Allen McCune playing James. So we got one character.
They got one,
playing their own name. But Callie Hernandez at that particular moment, I need to look and see what else she's in, because if she's
in Alien Covenant. I know that.
Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, I got it. I'll watch her in that. So because I don't watch that movie often. It's I like it, but it's also kind of a bummer.
Yeah, no, but I've watched it a few times since I bought it, just because I fucking love Michael Fassbender. Looking at Michael Fassbender, going,
yeah,
you blow, I'll do the fingering.
Yeah. It's all about the recorder.
Yeah, totally. That's what it really is, dude.
And there's other things here and there that I like about it, but it's not. I think I've seen Prometheus more than I've seen Covenant. Anyway, but because Covenant also feels like a compromise, but we'll talk about that if we ever do that pod. But the fact that Lisa goes there, and that the filmmaking at that point in this little sequence has been so effective, I can kind of forgive like any other kind of or any, that might be happening in the background. Even the fact that, I mean, now that I know it's not the Blair Witch who she sees in the reflection, it pisses me off even more.
Right.
But so thanks for ruining the one great sequence in the movie for me. But you didn't do it. Yeah. The screenwriter did it. So there you go. He never should have said that. He really just should have
kept his fucking mouth shut.
Yeah, because also, like, what if she can morph? What if she can not shapeshift, but she fucks with the perception, if she can fuck with the way you see her?
Because I mean, I like the idea of warping reality in Book of Shadows, and I know in the first Blair Witch, I always thought that it was Josh yelling.
Yeah.
But you, if I remember correctly, always thought it was the witch throwing her voice to be Josh,
or using his tongue to like.
Oh yeah. Through witchcraft. Yeah. I kind of this time I forgot completely that he literally says like Heather, like he's responding to hearing Heather.
Yeah.
And I found that very effective. This isn't a criticism, but I couldn't help but wish, since we heard Josh's voice, I would have loved it if they got Heather Donahue to just come in and loop in a line, so that I also go.
You just gave me goosebumps on my neck. Like, I
would have shit if we could have joined him in that. But my response is different than his response, because now I'm scared for him to turn around and
what a beautiful way to bring it full circle, because I care so much about her.
And then if it's not a visual cameo, it's an audio cameo,
totally. No, I would love that. Also, like, if that could have happened a few times, that would have been, because again, it would have been nice to know what was going on. I remember the first time going through that whole house running through sequence, and I had no idea what was going on, because the time travel thing had been introduced to me, because I didn't remember Curse of the Blair Witch. So I was just like, what the fuck is going on? And I definitely would have agreed with you then about the kitchen sink thing, but it didn't even, at least this time I can go like, well, maybe it's the lights outside, or what happens when it travels. The house just dropped in another reality or something, another timeline. I don't know.
Speaking of time travel, I have to bring up something that I'm wondering about with the spook house of it all. Or do you have anything more to say about Lisa in the upstairs?
No,
also,
said it all.
Well, okay, before I go on to this thing, I couldn't help but also wonder, this time, after James gets taken away, at the very end, he says something to her right before she gets knocked out, right? Like, I'm so sorry, or something.
Sure. I
think he says like, Lisa, I'm sorry, or something.
Okay.
I presume he is now doing the bidding of the witch, the way Rustin Parr was doing the bidding of the witch.
Okay.
The way Lane says you kind of have to. But this is the first time I thought, well, if James was hearing Heather's voice, is Lisa actually not hearing James at all?
Right. Yeah. I thought that too.
That was neat. So that was fun. No, but what I was going to get at was Lane says this thing where he understands that, like, Rustin Parr, like, you have to do what the witch is telling you to do.
Yeah.
the fact that the movie's doing time travel and the fact that they're in that house, it just planted the seed that I just hate that the seed has been planted because I don't want it to be a thing. But instead of, remember how I said like in the first movie, what if it's not Josh or the witch? But
Yeah.
what if they're in the 40s and it's Rustin Parr knocking her over?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just had this horrible thing about what if it's stupid Lane knocking her over?
Don't do that.
I'm sorry. But the movie does time travel and shit.
Oh.
And I'm like, what if like he's just like, well, the witch told me to, you know, in his very like, because there's something I felt bad for him, like as an actor, because the performance I was getting, and I don't know if he was directed that way, but like, first of all,
Oh God.
the aging on like his like long hair and his like
His beard.
his party city beard. And then the fact that okay, so maybe the notes are you've been driven a little nuts and you're down here, but I wanted to see more of like you have to do what the witch tells you and like the madness of like otherwise like you have to do it. And instead
Yeah.
he's just kind of playing this very
No.
like I'm crazy and I if you
Yeah.
had if you had a guy driven to madness and you're in this basement out of a tunnel, like I could be terrified. Like the idea on paper of Lane becoming essentially a slasher that you have to fight against.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Like a lucid Rustin Parr who like gets to verbally articulate, I don't want to do this, but I fucking have to.
Oh, that's kind of fucked up. Yeah.
Right. On paper, but what the execution of what we got in the movie. Meh.
Well, you know what it gave me? I got notes of Halloween Ends. I am Michael Myers. What? What does that mean? And why? Okay, wait, but Michael Myers is in the pipe, and now Corey is killing you. And wait, what just happened? So wait, is that guy Michael Myers, and now and the evil is in there? I don't understand what just happened. And for the rest of the movie, I'm just like, I have no idea what that scene. I still don't know what that scene was. But it's the same thing with this, with him running up, just like, no, you have to do what she tells you to. And I'm just like, oh, wait, why? Wait,
I mean,
who?
if
Wait,
it,
wait. What the witch tell?
the
Wait,
witch,
wait,
yeah,
wait. But when did she start telling? Wait, so now that you're,
because he's
is
been
that
here so
like now that
long.
you're here? Yeah, but so
That's
wait,
what
so you've
Rustin
been
Parr
here.
understood. Yeah.
So wait, so why aren't we seeing Rustin Parr also? Like, why, if we're time traveling, if we're going to play the time travel card and really just kind of like play with this interdimensional thing,
Yeah.
like we don't know what reality we're in, and you're going to kitchen sink it the way you are, put some specifics in there, you know,
Right.
like that would be creepy as fuck. What if you, oh my God, because like that might have been terrifying if Lisa, I guess, had done like enough research on Rustin Parr that she like saw a photograph of him and we saw a photograph of him thusly early in the movie, so that like by the time we get up there, if like she's like, you know, like at the bottom of like some stairs and looks up and just sees Rustin Parr
Right. And you
taking
all you have to
slow
do is
steps toward her
show
and
a
she's just like,
photograph of him
Rustin
earlier.
Parr or something like that, like,
Or you go downstairs and you see like 5 kids in a room, and then you go around the corner.
fuck me, what are you doing?
And there's
your movie is so much scarier than what we got.
all it has to be is
Now
a
I
kid.
blame you.
Yeah.
You ruined this movie by not writing it, Giancarlos. I'm mad at you. Because
to me,
you're fucking, you're putting shit in my head. Shit I don't need. It's gonna keep me awake. You killed Santa. Anyway, go on. That's an inside joke. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, no. If anything,
Yeah.
when Lane tells Lisa that you have to do what the witch tells you, that should almost have been, it shouldn't have been James that takes Lisa out. It should be Lisa going like, what? And then like having to fight against, like, if the warning is to Lisa, I felt like the payoff would be for Lisa. And instead,
Right.
she's I guess instead it's just informing us this is what James is doing. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But I would have, to me, the more connective thing is either give that warning to James or have Lisa having to do what Lane is doing.
That's one moment that could be echoed in it, but then throw a curveball. But like, yeah, only kind of like one person at a time allowed in the cellar, just for clarity's sake, like just so the progression can be the way you're describing it. And then we start wondering, like, okay, so now again, just to kind of feed the mystery, like we're wondering, like, okay, so now are you like, being controlled by the witch, and that's why you're behaving this way, or are you merely a figment of like the glamour that the witch
Right.
is casting? You're not even there. But it's just to get us to question, what's going on in a way that doesn't frustrate, that doesn't make me go like, wait, what? I'm lost. I'm completely lost, and I don't have enough interest to try and figure out what's going on. Which is it happened again a little bit to me. But I mean, I was exhilarated from the moments preceding, so I was just kind of like, then I was just kind of like, what, oh, and then it ended, and I was like, all right, I didn't hate it.
Yeah,
I don't love it either.
I didn't hate it. Well, I never hated it the first time. I just remember hating it.
Oh, I hated it. I hated
But
it.
yeah, I think maybe it was talking to you that made me
Maybe.
But yeah, no, I if anything, I thought, and maybe it is because of the kitchen sink of it all, but I'm like, this is a fine horror movie. It's not a very good Blair Witch movie. And even as a horror movie, I'm not saying it's all that, but I can hold it to different standards.
No, it's that said though, somebody offered me a chance to see either sequel again.
Don't you fuck really?
Sorry.
Fuck you.
It's all my fault, John.
I remember you hating this so much when it came out that I'm like,
yeah,
at least this weird sidestep of 2, even as tropey as he thinks some of these character introductions are, I'm like, he's still gonna go back to that over this.
The characters are less annoying to me. They don't make any sense, but the fact that like
they yell a lot too.
They do.
They yell for Ashley and they yell for Peter so much.
Yeah, but no, that's all they do in the second movie. And the fact that I can sit there and just kind of go like, I know exactly who you're supposed to be. I know exactly who you're supposed to be.
I'd rather have that than I don't know who any of you are.
No, I think you and I just differ. But maybe it's just the way it happens. Like, because I mean, there is a world where I can watch a movie, like say, Night of the Demons, where we've got like, I know who you are, and I know who you are, and I know who you are, and I'm like, yay! I didn't do that with Book of Shadows. I think because it took itself too seriously. Also, like for me, for my taste, like you can't do those. You can't. It's a tricky tightrope walk to balance dimension and tropey cardboard cutout, bullshit. So then I didn't feel like Book of Shadows succeeded. I would see this movie before I would watch, because I just had a better time watching it.
Okay.
Sorry. You're alone.
I'm all alone. He's all alone. I have a question for you, though. Do you bump into the fact that it, with the idea of the videotape and it being on YouTube and luring them in, the fact that they're in like a time loop slash bootstrap? Did I say bootstrap? I meant bootstrapped paradox. Does it become too time travel-y for you? Do you bump into that? It's like, I don't like this much time travel in my fucking horror. Or are you just like, whatever?
Whatever.
Whatever.
Well, I mean, because again, like maybe having these pods, to like lead me in. If I had just kind of watched Blair Witch and Curse of the Blair Witch and Book of Shadows, and then watched this without going, into in-depth discussion with you prior or after the fact and prior to this movie, maybe I wouldn't have paid as much attention to it. Maybe I would have felt a little bit more lost. But because like you were the one who introduced me to the concept that like in the first movie, the reason the house is there is because one theory is that it's because they've traveled to like 40 years ago or whatever. And that never occurred to me. I was just kind of like, oh, I guess it's there because, magic. Mm-hmm. So I think I do a lot more of throwing my hands up and shrugging, when it's introduced in this movie, because there's that thing where like the alarm goes off and it's, I guess, 7 a.m., but it's still dark outside and they can't figure it out. And again, I can't figure it out because I'm like, so wait, so that means that their timepieces are still measuring time in a formatted way,
Yeah.
but they're off that timeline. They're now in some kind of like much more amorphous,
Yeah.
nebulous, like place where time means nothing, I guess. And the same thing with like, we've been here when fucking I was gonna call him Lane and Julia Talia,
Oh yeah.
Lando and Julia, when they show up, it's like, we've been gone for 5 days and everything like that. At least, although we can't tell because the sun won't rise. I'm like, okay, wait. So if the sun won't rise, how do you know it's been 4 or 5 days? I know, again,
Unless their timepieces are also operating in a fully linear capacity.
I guess, but the movie doesn't do that work, so I'm just kind of
No,
like,
and
so I just shrug. I'm just kind of like, okay, so time's fucked up. Got it.
right.
Check.
But the fact that like their GPS was being fucked with, I also thought like, wouldn't it be neat if like their digital phones and clocks were fucked with? But like, no, those are actually your only constant. Everything else is getting fucked with. Yeah. Also, I'm glad you brought that up because Lane doesn't want her to go near them, and I want to know more about what else have you encountered
Right.
that makes you say like, don't trust what we're seeing.
That would have been
I'm like,
interesting.
ooh, because at no point
Yeah.
do our heroes encounter anything that leaves me or them with the response of, oh my God, what was that? We can't trust what we're seeing. Oh, just
I know. I
yeah.
know. Again, one more thing that was introduced and then never paid off. So, I mean, but at the same time, like, yeah, it bothers me, but I just keep watching the movie.
Yeah, I kind of, it felt almost a little too sci-fi for me the first time I saw it. The fact that it becomes so timey-wimey.
Mm.
But now my only real problem isn't that, because I do like time travel and I do like stories about time loops. And I do like wondering in Bootstrap Paradoxes, like, well, then where did it all begin? Like, that's a fun question. My problem that I just recently stumbled upon, realizing I have a problem with,
Hmm.
is I get that I don't know when it started. Again, that's the whole fucking point. But that at some point, the witch takes this mini DV tape and through the power of lightning strikes it into a tree so that Lane can find it and put it on YouTube because I'm going to lure Heather's brother. But what does the witch care about Heather's brother 16 years
Yeah,
later?
I
Like
don't, I
what's
don't
in
know.
it for her? I don't get, like, people came into the woods.
Yeah,
Fine. Book of Shadows. People came into my woods. Please get the fuck out. But this was, I don't understand what's in it for her. And I don't mean like, oh, you can't possibly understand. That's what makes it scary. Like, no, why the fuck? What is drawing him to the, is it just this poor guy's
yeah.
curious all these years later and that's what damns him? I don't get it.
You're making me think about something I didn't even think about with either sequel. This is happening entirely too soon, given the
Oh,
track record of the Blair
oh,
Witch and her,
I was gonna get to that, sir.
okay, yeah, that the natural course to that next. So yeah,
Well, no, well, wait. I think maybe I misread you. What I was going to say by wait, you say too soon? I was going to say too long. Finish your thought, please. I want to hear what you're about to say.
well,
Compared
because
to,
all of the other incidents that get addressed in Curse of the Blair Witch were like 40 or 50 years apart.
oh yes, you mean okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
And I
so
got so
something shouldn't have
excited. I got
happened.
so excited that I misheard you. You said soon, and I heard late, and my brain. No, what I was gonna
No,
say, what I was gonna say was, so you're 4 and your sister goes missing,
yeah.
and then you see a video on YouTube and you think she's still in those woods, like in the same
Mm,
woods
yeah.
all these years later. Like, if somebody goes missing, they, eventually they travel. And I'm not talking about witchcraft and horror movie, but just your own internal logic is that Maybe she walked into another state. She found a Kmart. She got kidnapped by hillbillies and put in a van. But I would never think, is it 16? Because it was 99. So like, yeah, so 17 years since the Blair Witch footage was found. I would never think she'd be in the exact same spot. It doesn't make any sense to me. So this idea that like, I know she's still got to be there because I saw a flash of a, first of all, even when I was watching this in theaters, when we were seeing the footage running through the house and you see that little window or mirror and he goes, that's Heather. I'm like, no, it's not. It's just not. Like, look at it. It's not Heather.
Yeah.
Like they should have cast someone like whoever they cast play Lisa should have looked like Heather.
Yeah.
Because I instantly go, nope. And this is all wrong,
I agree with that because when I saw the photo, I was just kind of like, so they recast Heather? What's
yeah,
one of those things?
So he's like, no, but this video was uploaded recently, so she's got to be out there. But this whole idea of like, well, he's always held out hope that she's out there. Wait, he's vocally been saying for 17 years that she's never left those woods. How is she eating? What? How? What? It just.
And that conversation would have been an interesting addition to the script to have somebody actually kind of go like, so what do you think she's doing out there? Like, how do you think she's survived this
and
long?
he's like so unreasonable. He's like, I just know it. I just fucking know it, Yeah. And then people are just like, can't get through to this guy. Oh, that would have made the moment when they're outside the house and she's saying, don't fucking go in there. And he's like, this is why I came out. It felt like that scene is the payoff to a big character thread that we didn't get. And if you had him constantly insisting the whole time, I would have really bought that moment where he's like, fuck yeah, I'm going into that house. But
I'm glad you brought up just the I just know it is or whatever of it all, because one of the things that I responded to, I didn't even make a note of it, but I just kind of thought like, oh, that's interesting. The angle when we get the reveal of Lane and Talia's true intentions with like, the binding of the little wooden men and everything like that. And they're just like, yes, we lied, but we had to because everything else about it is true. Like we needed you to convince you because it's true. That's why we lied and everything like that. There was something about that kind of, and I don't know if this was just Adam Wingard and Sam Barrett, being prescient because the movie was released in 2016. That kind of mentality, like, yes, I need to lie about this thing because there is a real threat, so I'm going to fabricate things to try and convince people of the actual threat that's really there, so really I'm doing the right thing. That has only become more relevant, sadly, to this country and the way people want to form their arguments and try and persuade people to get them on their side, ever since 2016, and that really resonated with me in a way that I was like, I don't remember this at all. We were all younger then, but but it really struck a chord with me, especially like with everything that we've been introduced with them in terms of just like the Confederate flag and
we've talked, I feel like we've talked about this, maybe not on the pods, although maybe we have, but in real life, how different cycles of horror in different decades are usually reflections of the fears of what's going on, specifically sociopolitically, culturally, of those times. And I'm not saying there's a bunch of other movies like this, but you are hitting the nail on the head with lying about stuff in 2016 and Confederate flags. And this one movie is certainly a product of its era, whether it meant to or not.
Yeah, right.
So now I like it a little bit more. Thank you, Eddie.
You're welcome.
Because sometimes that shit's like all I need. All they needed is like a Nazi getting punched in the face, and I would have been like, yeah. Like if Lane had like a little drawer full like Nazi paraphernalia, and people are like, what the fuck? And then later he gets punched in the face. Now it wouldn't matter if all the kitchen sink stuff. I'd just be like, oh, this is fun. It skews towards my agenda, therefore I like it.
That's funny. So do you have anything else to share?
No, well, we were just talking about time travel, and I just didn't get to say this one sentence, so I'll just say it now. And that
Go
is
for
just
it.
when we were really dissecting some of the time stuff there for a bit.
Yes.
I like that in Blair Witch Project,
Uh-huh.
if you want to accept that time travel is an element, it's there for you to chew on. But also, if you don't, the movie works. In Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, if you want to acknowledge that the tree is grown because they're in the future and now that they're
Right,
not,
right.
it's there for you to chew on if you want to, but the movie doesn't say either way. I
Yeah.
like when movies can, even in a sequel, like Blair Witch 2 does that. Blade Runner does this beautifully.
Hmm.
Is Deckard a replicant or not? And Blade Runner 2049 goes, actually, here's another question. And whether he's replicant or not, we didn't bother fucking answering it for you.
Exactly.
This
Right.
still applies both ways. And I like that Blair Witch 2 did the exact same thing. And then this one goes, no, it's time travel. Like it's really time travel.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's the tape, and then he goes back and just. And I went, oh, okay. I liked it when it was an option for you to maybe nibble on.
I agree. There's also there. I think there's one example that I can think of where things get so sharply defined as to what's occurring in the sequels, and it affects the when you go back and watch the first film, it affects the watch. But I think it works is the REC movies.
Oh my
Wreck.
god. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like, wow, okay. Now there's clarity about like what's actually going on. All right, cool. I'll ride that wave. It seemed like it was something else the first time I watched the first movie, but now, I know it's this thing. All right, cool.
Way to invoke one of the best found footage movies ever into this conversation about,
I gotta watch those movies again.
Yeah.
I like all of them. No, I like all of them. Even the ones because the third and the fourth really take detours.
They're both really good for, like, nothing could top to me 1 and 2.
No.
But I really like what 3 does as a detour.
Yeah.
A lot. Like, you don't even need to see 1 and 2. And then 4 kind of bringing it back home. But like, no, they all have value. They're all great.
Yeah.
1 and 2 are just greater, but I really like 3 and 4.
Yeah. So anyway,
I
final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I hope we never get a 4, because this is another thing that just should never have been franchised.
And if we do, I'm gonna go see it.
Of course, yeah. I will. There was at one point after Book of Shadows. I don't think it was both of them, but I could be wrong. But like Eduardo Sanchez and maybe, or was it Daniel Myrick, or both, where there was talk with Lions, or it wasn't Lionsgate hadn't acquired them yet, so still Artisan. There was talk of doing a third Blair Witch movie, because they're like, well, we had nothing to do with 2, but we want to do 3, but it was going to be a prequel about Ellie Kedward. And I'm like, all right, fine. But as time has gone, now having seen the Vivitch, there is a pretty straightforward horror narrative you could do about a period movie, especially like we talked about earlier tonight, if she herself isn't a witch, but either horror befalls her, or the products or the people of this town create their own monster. There is a version that is more than just she gets banished and tied to a tree and now
sure, but you're still thusly creating a definitive this is what happened story, and taking away all of that fun.
But
you don't really know when you watch the first movie.
I don't do Eileen Treacle. I don't do Coffin Rock. I don't do Rustin Parr. I don't do any of it. So that's all still, I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't want it. But back when they were talking about doing it, at least now I understand there is a version of that that's a little bit better than,
prequels are rough.
Prequels are rough. But 17 years later, my sister's in the exact same woods.
Well, this movie was rough too. Like, I'm not saying they shouldn't do that, because it wouldn't be good like this movie.
How I feel she's in the exact same woods if they're going a year or 2 later and not 17 years later.
Yeah, but they wanted to try to get a studio to make that movie. Like, maybe A24 would make that movie, or maybe if it has, maybe Adam Wingard could get that movie made. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like that's the story he wanted to tell. That's another thing. I want to see more interviews with him and with Sam Barrett, just like talking about like, what's up?
Yeah.
What did you
That's
do? What
that's
did you do?
I went back and watched a lot actually this morning.
Okay.
But all of them are either from at Comic-Con or when they're promoting the movie. And what I
Hmm.
want to hear about more is like 6 years later.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
because the only thing I cited that one interview with Adam Wingard talking about more about what it was like making that movie in a vacuum.
Hmm.
And he said something to the effect of like he doesn't regret making the movie. He's like it's Blair Witch the ride, and I'm still happy I made it. I'm like, that's a great description because it isn't the Blair Witch Project at all. It
No.
is put the seatbelt down. We're going through the haunted tunnel, and boo, it's Blair Witch the ride. And at least he knows it.
Mm.
But I remember Red Letter Media, they had Simon Barrett on to discuss The Guest. And it's a hell of an, if you like The Guest, holy shit, go watch it. It's a great interview. But at
Mm.
the very beginning of the interview, they do something to the effect of like, and I love that he has a sense of humor about it, but they're like, hey, this is the guy who wrote You're Next. He's like, yep. And he's produced VHS. He's like, yep. And they're like, and Blair Witch. And he's like, yeah, he knows. And I want to hear
Yeah.
more from the guy who knows.
Yeah, that's what that's you don't have anything to sell anymore, so spill it.
Yeah.
What happened? What'd you do? What did you do? That's what I want to know.
Show us on
What
the
happened?
doll where Lionsgate touched you.
Exactly. Right,
Sorry to invoke a touching you doll joke, but for anyone out there. But the impression I got from some of the earlier interviews was like, what was like was there any specific mandate? And they're like, aside from like we want it, like it has to be about like Heather's brother going to the woods looking for her. They're like, it's all you, but we don't want this to be like, we want it to be a sequel to the original movie, a continuation of that. We want someone going back. Other than that, like Ball was in their court to like cook this up.
You know what would have made it even, again, switched it up. You have to you have a different situation now. What if he just went out alone?
Ooh, like armed
You really have
with
to
his wits.
work. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and you really have to work to like, how do you make that movie? And then you have to explore the possibilities. What is it like going out into the woods alone? Like, do you come across anybody else while you're out there? Certainly not people who came with you, but are other people out there like looking for the Blair Witch, and do you just kind of like cross paths and then you come upon them later? Or is it just you convincing yourself that she's out there, and because you're the only one who's perceiving it, you can't bounce it off anybody
And
else what's
how
going
much are
on with
you
you all,
scaring yourself? You're in your own head.
right? And you can just fall apart on camera, like, and
Oh,
we as the audience are the only one who are with you. Like, there's something, again, that's a movie that I could watch. It's probably,
yeah,
but
you're selling me on like David Lynch's Blair Witch, and like
yeah,
I'll
right.
watch the shit out of that.
But it also feels like it would fall enough in line with the original, because there is so much strife, so much, anguish that is depicted, in that movie, that like suffering needs to be there, not just the suffering of like the horror of it all, but the suffering of just survival, and losing your grip of like what's going on. But if you're alone, it's a different animal than if you're out there with a group full of people. That could have solved a lot of problems.
Yeah, I
Anyway.
like that because this movie seems to say, "Oh, the last one had 3. Well, now we'll do 6." Like,
Yeah, right.
I mean, I still like the idea of 2 just going, "Well, let's just avoid all that and go over here." I respect
In
not.
theory.
Shut up.
I go.
I know. It just hurts sometimes. It really hurts.
I know.
But no, but All Alone is also definitely
Yeah.
I never thought about that. But there's a lot you could do with that.
Yeah, go to like a more
Surprisingly.
into the wild direction, maybe.
Oh my god.
Yeah. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. And why do they always go in the winter?
Oh my God. Oh, Jason in the Snow. I'm
Right?
still
We're
sad.
never
I'm
gonna
still
get it.
waiting. I'm still waiting. God damn it.
Yeah. Well, on that note, God damn it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I don't know what we're gonna come back with next or when, but
Yeah.
it'll probably be a spooky movie, and we'll be talking about it. So thanks for joining me, Eddie.
Thank you, John Carlos, for having me.
Bye, everybody.